Britons are bracing for record temperatures as high as 41 degrees, according to the Met Office. The red extreme heat warning is in effect today, with officials urging people to travel and commute only when necessary. Excessive heat across the UK has led to flight suspensions, train delays and other infrastructure problems. Greg Dewerpe is founder and CIO at PropTech and invests, of course, and talking about VC and what they can do in this arena. Greg, very good morning to you. I heard a fascinating comment from someone I was chatting to in Davos, and he said, look, there's a gold rush going on in climate, a gold rush going on at the moment. I want to sell them the shovels rather than get involved in that gold rush itself. It's a very tricky area knowing where to invest, isn't it? Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and thanks for having me. Yes, indeed, and I would say that 2022 has been an eye-opening year. I think in the face of heat waves or extreme weather, and also what we're facing in terms of energy crisis, I think we have to become more educated and more clean-minded and pragmatic when it comes to the climate change fight. So time is running out, and so we need to focus on what moves the needle. And it so turns out that I think what the world needs is another EV company or another meatless burger. What the world needs is us to invest in technologies that are going to really help decarbonize our economies at scale. And where we should allocate most of our time is in the most polluting industry in the world. And it so happens that the most polluting industry in the world is everywhere around us. It's the built world. It's the real estate industry. It accounts for 40% of greenhouse gas emission. It's more than any other industries that we can think of. And so I think there's an educational problem which we're working very hard to solve by, kind of trying to be a thought leader in the space and investing. More than ever, I think investing in the transition of our real estate industry, our critical infrastructure, should be top of the list when it comes to allocating resources, policy making, and overall kind of public awareness.
And I hear what you're saying, and I've spoken to a lot of people about the retrofitting of buildings, about the right way to construct new buildings as well, and there's some amazing things going on the technology front as well. Just a very obvious question, what's in it for our viewers? Where can they invest in this without finding themselves in a position like they have been in other technology, where, quite frankly, growth rates have been exacerbated, the route to profitability has been questionable, and now we've seen a revaluation which has been quite brutal?
Sure. I think we need to make a distinction. And when we look at the reset of the technology sector over the last 6 to 9 months, as a result of inflation and rates and growth, expectations, I would say investing in technology that matters, investing in stuff that is actually going to solve mission critical problems is always going to be a bet that's worth making. I guess, the last few years, we've seen excess in the market where capital has gone into, specific verticals that were not, let's say, solving real problems, that didn't have sustainable business models in sort of NFTs and places that maybe were not necessarily where it matters. But when you invest in technologies that are going to enable us to decarbonize, enable us to build resiliency in our physical world, and resiliency is a key aspect today where we see that, our housing sector is at risk because of the heat, and our grandparents, our parents, or our kids, their well-being, is the livelihood is at risk because of climate change associated risk. Technologies that are going to enable us to transition in terms of decarbonization and resiliency are key, and are going to become some of the most valuable businesses in this world, because they are going to be there no matter what. They are solving a problem. It doesn't matter where rates are going. It doesn't matter where inflation goes. If you're solving a real problem, if there's a need for what you offer to the market, you will create a substantial business.
Greg, the UK government will publish a national resilience strategy later this year, so it's going to be reviewing effectively some of the failures we've seen across the country as heat has the temperature soared. Just tell us what sort of retrofitting, what sort of changes are required as we see effectively roads, tarmacs melting, train tracks catching fire. Sure.
The opportunity around retrofitting is massive. And so if you look at the built world overall, there is about $10 trillion a year that needs to be invested in retrofitting technologies for housing, for office, and all sorts of buildings around us between now and 2050. $10 trillion a year. I think everyone needs to understand those amounts. And I think those amounts needs to go into all sorts of things. So if we think about energy efficiency, it's a big topic, not only because we need to transition to a greener economy, but also because we've realized that our sources of energy are becoming a matter of national security, particularly in Europe. So the way we consume our energy is critical. So if you look at the housing stock in the UK, it's probably the single oldest, most obsolete stock of thing in Europe. And we need to invest in stuff that is, let's say, the low-hanging fruit. So intelligent control system, LEDs, and automation in those buildings so that they can operate more efficiently when it comes to heating and cooling. We also need to invest in innovation around insulation materials or heat loss kind of technologies, because one of the big issues with our buildings is the heat transfer is very inefficient. So in winter, our buildings are struggling to stay warm, and in summer, they're struggling to stay cold, which means that in turn, we use more energy to cool or heat them. And so there's a terrible wastage that comes into that. And so more broadly, the government needs to also get involved in making sure that there are the right financing tools, the right kind of incentives for the end users, whether it's, you or I in our homes or kind of tenants in offices or landlords owning those offices, to make sure that they are in a place where it's worth and to invest the capital into those retrofitting technologies. So there's a number of things that need to go into that. Obviously, with the broader infrastructure, you mentioned it, we can see some of our airports and roads that are struggling with the heat. Right. I think the government needs to play a very key role.
Thank you so much for joining us, Greg. Greg Dewerpe with us, the founder and CIO at PropTech. A quick recap of what we've been